Hello Muslim friends in the world. The Grand Hall of Columbia University, New York, was packed with a sea of people. Students, academics, and truth seekers sat closely together, eagerly awaiting the moment that was about to unfold. The grand room, adorned with crystal chandeliers, buzzed with murmurs and the faint clicking of phones recording the atmosphere. On the stage, three prominent figures sat facing each other, ready for a debate that would shake many beliefs. On one side sat Professor Michael Thompson, a renowned atheist and former NASA scientist who now taught philosophy of science. He was known as a fierce critic of religion. Wearing an elegant black suit, he crossed his arms and scanned the audience with a smug smile. In the center sat Pastor John Williams, a senior pastor of the American Baptist Church. He had debated many Muslims before and was confident that today, once again, he would prove the superiority of Christianity. On the other side sat Dr. Ahmed Yusuf, a Muslim scholar and expert in comparative religion. He remained calm, accustomed to debates, but today, he sensed that something greater than just an exchange of arguments was about to take place. The moderator, a senior professor of the university, stepped forward and addressed the crowd in a loud, clear voice. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's grand debate. Our theme, does God exist, and which religion is the truth? Let's hear the perspectives of our esteemed speakers. Applause erupted across the room. Camera flashes flickered. Professor Thompson took the microphone first. With a deep and confident voice, he declared, "Religion is a myth. Humans invented God to fill gaps in their knowledge. In ancient times, people thought lightning was the wrath of the gods. Now we know it's just electricity. Just like the idea of God, an illusion that will fade as science advances." Some students chuckled and clapped. Pastor John smiled and shook his head slightly. "I respectfully disagree, Professor. God is real, and He is Jesus Christ. The Bible is the ultimate proof of truth. Salvation is found only in His name." A woman in the front row whispered, "This debate is going to be intense." Dr. Ahmed Yusuf picked up the microphone, smiled, and said, "All right. Professor Thompson, you claim that God is a myth. Pastor John, you claim that God is Jesus. Let's use logic and evidence. I will respond to both of your arguments, not with assumptions, but with reason and undeniable proof." The room fell into silence. Everyone, including his two opponents, was now fully focused. The great debate had just begun. The room remained silent. All eyes were fixed on Dr. Ahmed Yusuf, who now held control of the discussion. He turned to Professor Michael Thompson with a calm gaze before speaking. "Professor, you stated that God is merely a myth, and that everything can be explained through science. Let me ask you this, do you believe that the universe had a beginning?" Professor Thompson smirked. "Of course. Scientific evidence shows that the universe originated from the Big Bang approximately 13.8 billion years ago." Dr. Ahmed nodded. "Good. Now, let's apply simple logic. Everything that has a beginning must have a cause. The car you drive, the house you live in, they were all created by someone. The universe had a beginning, so what caused it?" Professor Thompson leaned back in his chair. "Perhaps the universe emerged from quantum fluctuations, where particles can appear out of nothing." Dr. Ahmed gave a slight smile. "Quantum fluctuations can only occur within a pre-existing framework of physical laws. But before the Big Bang, there was no space, no time, and no physical laws. So, how can something emerge from absolute nothingness without a cause?" A murmur spread through the audience. Professor Thompson hesitated, struggling to form a response. Dr. Ahmed continued, "Islam explains that God is Al-Khaliq, the creator, who is uncreated and independent of everything. Even science confirms that the universe is so finely tuned and complex that it is impossible for it to have occurred by mere chance." Professor Thompson frowned, appearing unsettled for the first time. "Jesus, God or messenger? Now, Pastor John Williams took the microphone. All right, I acknowledge that there is a God. But the true God is Jesus Christ. He came down to earth to atone for humanity's sins. Dr. Ahmed turned to him. Pastor, allow me to ask, in Mark 13 verse 32, Jesus said, "But about that day or hour, no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father." If Jesus were God, how could he not know the time of the final hour? Pastor John was silent for a moment. He was speaking as a human at that time. Dr. Ahmed smiled. So, you admit that Jesus spoke as a human? Then what about John 20 verse 17, where Jesus said, "I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God"? If Jesus has a God, how can he himself be God? Pastor John looked uneasy. He had not anticipated such questions. Dr. Ahmed continued, in Matthew 26 verse 39, Jesus fell on his face and prayed to God. If Jesus is God, who was he praying to? The entire room fell into stunned silence. Pastor John attempted to answer, but the words caught in his throat. On the phone screens of those recording, his face appeared pale. The miracles of the Quran. Dr. Ahmed looked at both of them and said, "The Quran mentioned scientific facts 1,400 years ago that modern science has only recently discovered. For example, the development of the human embryo is described in Surah Al-Mu'minun 12-14, and the expansion of the universe is mentioned in Surah Ad-Dariyat 47. How could an illiterate man in the desert have known these facts without divine revelation?" Professor Thompson and Pastor John remained silent. For the first time in their lives, they had no words. The room remained still. The atmosphere was so tense that even the sound of the audience's breathing could be heard. This tension could only be broken by one thing, the undeniable truth. The room was heavy with silence. It was no longer a simple academic debate, it had transformed into a battle of truth, logic, and faith. Professor Michael Thompson sat motionless, his mind racing. For years, he had firmly believed that science held all the answers. But today, his confidence was shaken. Dr. Ahmed Yusuf's arguments had torn apart his long-held beliefs. On the other side, Pastor John Williams gripped the microphone tightly. He had spent his entire life preaching that Jesus was God, yet now he found himself facing questions he couldn't answer. Dr. Ahmed remained calm. He let the silence linger before speaking in a soft, steady voice. Sometimes, words are unnecessary. The truth is like the sun, it shines whether you choose to open your eyes or not. Professor Thompson exhaled deeply. His hands trembled slightly as he leaned forward. Dr. Ahmed, I never expected this. I've spent my life rejecting the idea of God, thinking religion was just superstition. But now, I realize that science itself has led me to him. Gasps filled the room. The audience whispered among themselves. Are you saying? Dr. Ahmed asked gently. Professor Thompson looked down for a moment, as if searching for something he had lost long ago. Then, with teary eyes, he looked up and spoke firmly. I want to learn more about Islam. The murmurs in the crowd grew louder. The cameras zoomed in, capturing the face of a man who had just undergone a profound transformation. Suddenly, Pastor John stood up. His expression was intense. I have one last question. Dr. Ahmed nodded. Go ahead. If Jesus is not God, then what was his true mission? Dr. Ahmed smiled. Jesus, or Isa, peace be upon him, in Islam, was one of God's greatest messengers. He never claimed to be God. Even in Matthew 7 verse 21, he said, Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. In other words, salvation is not in calling him Lord but in following God's true guidance. Pastor John swallowed hard. He had read that verse many times, but never thought of it this way. Dr. Ahmed continued, Islam is not a new religion. It is the same message preached by all prophets, including Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad, peace be upon them all. They all worshipped one God and called people to submit to him. That is the meaning of Islam. Pastor John clenched his fists. He recalled every sermon he had ever given, every time he had preached about Jesus being God. For the first time in his life, he felt cold fear. Fear that he had been wrong. He took a deep breath, closed his eyes for a moment, and then exhaled. When he opened them, his face was calm. If this is the truth, his voice wavered, then I am ready to accept it. The audience gasped. Some people covered their mouths in shock. Professor Thompson slowly stood up beside him. Me too. A wave of murmurs, gasps, and astonishment spread through the hall. Then, a group of Muslim students in the audience began whispering, Takbir. And suddenly, the entire hall roared with a powerful takbir. Allahu Akbar. The sound echoed off the walls like thunder. There, on stage, in front of hundreds of witnesses and live-streaming cameras, Professor Michael Thompson and Pastor John Williams recited the Shahada. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa Allah, wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and I bear witness that Muhammad is his messenger. Tears rolled down their faces. Two men who once denied Islam now stood as its newest followers. The hall erupted into applause and tears. Some people wept, others embraced. It was a moment that would be talked about for years to come. Dr. Ahmed placed a reassuring hand on their shoulders and whispered, Welcome home, my brothers. And at that moment, under the bright lights of the grand hall, two lost souls had finally found the truth they had been searching for.